Minister in the Health Department, but also as Secretary of State for Health up until the last election. But I actually know Andy first from his experience as a consumer of the health service, and to me his credibility comes from somebody who actually starts from the personal experience both of his family, himself and his constituents, and how they are finding the health and wider care service working and not working. So Andy, we've had an introduction from the Fabian report that came out last year, the two commissions, John Oldham's commission and Kate Barker's commission. I'd like to hear from you now on how you're going to take this forward.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Good evening, everybody. So, to answer the question that's put before us tonight, health and care after 2015 together, absolutely, emphatically, yes. In fact, I could probably borrow a slogan that's now redundant, better together, I think might be available for our policy. But it has to be, it's the only way to go. And I just want to explain to you my analysis on why I have got to the point that I have in terms of developing Labour's policy. It is born of deep reflection on my time in the department, and I hope I've used opposition for its constitutional purpose, which is to take a proper step back, to think deeply about the challenges facing the health and care system in this, the century of the ageing society, and then to try and come up with an answer that people can buy into, that people can believe in. And that's what I've been trying to do, and that's what I'm about to lay out before our conference this week. Firstly, I want to, when I came in, I heard Kate talking eloquently about failure to do it. You know, that if we leave, what are we going to do? Just leave people to fend for themselves. And I just want to kind of build on that point, because I want to begin by describing what I see as the problem before I come on to give you what I think is the solution. The problem is, if I could summarise it in this way, we're trying to rise to the challenge of an ageing society with a medical model of care. And that, I think, is the cleanest summary I can make of why things, as John has just said, aren't satisfactory to the public. If you go back to 1948, when the NHS was created, the World Health Organization set out a definition of health in that year, which I'm sure will be familiar to many of you, but I'll just repeat for sake of clarity this evening. Health is, quotes, a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Now, for all that the NHS was a wonderful step forward in that year, it has never been set up to deliver that. It has, in common parlance, always been a sickness service rather than truly a national health service. That's what people say. And as John, in his report, sets out as articulate as anybody I've seen do, this does lead to this situation where we have a system that can't see the whole person. If I could put it this way, we have a patient-centred system, not a person-centred system. And there's a world of difference, isn't there, between those two things. The NHS sees the immediate problem before it, be it the broken hip, the stroke, but it's not good at seeing the whole person behind it, and not just the whole person behind it, but the whole family behind it, the carers and everybody who's involved in the care of that person. And that has become, over recent times, a bigger and bigger problem. You know, the cracks are showing as we're trying to deal with, meet the needs of an ageing population with this medical model. What it leads to, I think, is what Kate was saying, that we don't spend a few pounds supporting people in their own homes, but seemingly we're content to spend thousands of pounds keeping people unnecessarily in hospital beds. Now, that isn't sustainable in human terms. The ever-increasing hospitalisation of older people is no answer to the ageing society. But it's not sustainable in financial terms either. Because for the want of investing in social care, we leave people to drift to the most expensive end of the health and care system, the acute hospital. And that won't be, at some point this system is getting close to it now, but at some point this system simply will not work. Hospitals are becoming increasingly dysfunctional because of the severe cuts we've seen to social care. A&E, not a winter crisis, but a spring, summer and autumn crisis. It's the numbers of people coming through is just constantly increasing. And we're going to get to that point where the system simply won't be able to cope. And that, in effect, is the problem. But it's more than that, isn't it? It's more deep than that. It's that it just isn't meeting the aspirations that people have for the care of their mum or their dad or their son or their daughter if they're dealing with a child with complex needs or an adult with disability. For people who are caring for somebody with multiple or ongoing needs, it's a battle, isn't it? You have to battle. You're ringing the council for this, the NHS for that. Nobody has the complete picture of what is needed. And as John says, you have a series of random disconnected encounters with health professionals and you tell the same story to everybody who comes through the door. How wasteful is that, if nothing else? I don't think, I would say that these silos are a luxury we can't afford anymore. We have to ask people to work differently around the person. So the problem, if you get the picture, the problem is that. And it really boils down to the fact that all parliaments and all political parties have basically failed to see this problem and to invest in social care over many, many years, to the point where in England in 2014 we have a malnourished, minimum wage, 0 hours social care system that dishes out care in 15-minute slots, where there isn't time to deliver any other than throw a cup of tea down, and there isn't any meaningful care or intervention that can be made to alter the course of that person's day and to keep them safer. And it's a system which still sends out the message to any young person who comes into it to care for someone else's mum, dad, brother, sister, that looking after someone else's relative is pretty much the lowest form of work, lower than the minimum wage, because you don't get the 15 minutes between, you don't get the travel time pay between the 15-minute visits. Now, this can't go on, can it? I mean, I just don't see how it can possibly go on, because this failure just piles pressure on the acute system. So that is the problem, as I see it. And just finally on the problem, when we think of physical, mental, social, essentially we've got three systems to deliver for each one of those sections of need. Physical needs through the mainstream NHS, mental health care needs dealt with by separate organisations in separate buildings on the fringes of the NHS, and then social care needs through councils. Now, it might have been possible when people were living to their 70s, to kind of run a system in that way, when you kind of try and disaggregate people to different parts. But when you're dealing people in their 90s or beyond, their needs become a blur of the physical, mental and social. You can't say where one starts and the other. You can't disaggregate one person into these systems. So it stands to reason that it's got to change. At the moment, at any point in the system, if you end up at any point in the system, the chances are that some of your needs are being neglected. So if you're in the acute hospital, there's a fair chance that your mental and social needs are being neglected. If you unfortunate to spend large parts of your life in the mental health care system, your physical health will likely be neglected. This can't go on. We do need, as John said, a system that can see the whole person. That is urgently required if we are to aspire to 21st century care. So here we go. Here's the solution. This week we'll set out a 10-year plan for a national health and care service based on the Oldham Commission, fully accepting its analysis and recommendations, and I like to think endorsed by the Barker Commission. It seemed to me that the central analysis that we've made was endorsed by Kay Barker's commission. One budget, one service, meeting all of one person's needs, starting in the home, building the support around people. And why people say to me, why not just kind of go for pooled budgets or the old ways of trying to make the system work better by pushing it together? Why do you have to go all the way to full integration? It's because that allows us to do something fundamentally important, and that is to change the way the financial incentives work. At the moment, the activity tariff or the episodic tariff is basically standing in the way of us making a big change. Hospitals get paid by every person that comes through the door, and they're kind of stuck, they're hooked on that way of operating. They can't aspire to change care because that is how they get paid. And it's worse, isn't it? Because councils don't have an incentive to invest in social care because they want to keep the council tax down. So the financial tide drags to the hospital and the expensive part of the system. It's only by creating a single budget at local level that we could do something fundamentally important, which is create a year of care budget for people, covering all of their physical, mental and social needs. So one budget for the whole year, covering all of their needs. And I hope you can see how that would immediately transfer the incentive the other way. It would give the system the incentive to keep people supported at home rather than treat them in a hospital. And that, I think, until you crack that, we won't have, until we have a financial tide that supports prevention and well-being, we won't be able to build the 21st century service that we all, I'm sure, want to see. The other thing that it allows, when you bring together into one service the physical, mental and social, is it allows something truly radical that people have only spoken about but actually can't be achieved because the service can't see the whole person. If you bring these things together into the NHS, you create the conditions for the full personalisation of care. So it means you can say to people, you can deal with people, individual by individual, family by family. What is it that's going to work for you? How can we support you to maximise, to optimise the care so that you can be supported to also care for your loved one? And that full personalisation is, for me, a very important part of what this is about. And critically, it means carers not being invisible to the system anymore, but central in developing a personalised care plan that has a chance of working for that family. So this is where our thinking is going. I think that the point has come where the NHS, I think, is in a very dangerous position. What we need is a journey, a plan set out that it can work towards over a 10-year period, where it can grow into this whole person service and fully integrate services around the individual. Not through a structural reorganisation. As John says, the Health and Wellbeing Board is a perfectly adequate entity to use to build this system. And crucially, it allows you to build a more social model of support. So it allows you to make the links between health and housing policy at local level, health and planning policy, health and leisure policy, health and education policy. That is the change that it allows you to make. And I think until we think in those terms, we won't have an answer to the challenges of the ageing society. So, I mean, I'll finish on that point. There is obviously much more that I could say. But what I'm trying to do here is set out a route map for a demoralised, shattered service that at the moment doesn't know where it's going. It doesn't have a clue who's in charge, what's going on. It's basically struggling to make sense of the chaos that we've had inflicted on it in recent years. And this is meant to be a plan that people can believe in, that speaks to their vocation, not about new targets, but about whole person care. It can hopefully unite politicians and clinicians and give us a route map, as I say, to secure the NHS in the 21st century.